I sat at the kitchen table, the empty mug of coffee clutched tightly in my hands, staring blankly out the window. The snow from the night before had blanketed the neighborhood, its pristine white surface undisturbed by the chaos that had unfolded inside my home. The silence of the morning was deafening, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that wraps itself around your chest and squeezes. Last night, my wife, Megan, had stumbled through the front door at 3 a.m., drunk and reeking of alcohol and cheap cologne. She wasn't supposed to be out so late. Actually, she wasn't supposed to be out at all. We had talked about spending New Year's together as a quiet night in. She had insisted it would just be the two of us this year. No wild parties, no loud countdowns, just a calm evening reflecting on the year past and planning for the future. But her plans changed. The last-minute invite she got from her co-workers turned into a night-long extravaganza. I had questioned it when she said she was going, but her sharp tongue quickly silenced me. "You don't own me, Ryan," she spat, grabbing her coat. "It's just one party. Stop being so boring." So, I stayed home like the fool I was, waiting for her to return. When Megan finally did stumble in, she was a mess. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her clothes wrinkled in a way that screamed she hadn't been just sitting at a bar sipping cocktails. But it was the mark on her neck, a glaring, dark purple hickey, that made my stomach churn. "Happy New Year, babe," she slurred, laughing as she nearly tripped over her own feet. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at her like she was a stranger. "What is that on your neck?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though the rage was boiling inside me. "What?" She blinked, then stumbled toward the mirror by the door. Her fingers brushed against the hickey, and for a brief second, I saw panic flash across her face. But then she smirked, and said, "Oh, this? Just a little fun. Don't be such a prude, Ryan. It's New Year's." Her words were a dagger to the heart. "What do you mean, just a little fun?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Megan, you have a hickey on your neck. You don't get that from a handshake or a toast." She shrugged, pulling off her coat and kicking her shoes into the corner. "Relax. It's not like it meant anything. God, you're so dramatic sometimes. It's just a party." But it wasn't just a party. I knew that. She knew that. And yet, there she stood, unapologetic and cruel, brushing off the betrayal as if it were nothing more than spilled champagne. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked away, leaving her laughing to herself in the hallway. That night, as she passed out on the couch, still wearing the dress she had left in, I sat in the bedroom, trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. Megan wasn't always like this. Or maybe she was, and I had been too blind, or too in love, to see it. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hickey, that smirk, and the way she dismissed me like I was a joke. I heard her voice echoing in my head. "Relax. It's not like it meant anything." By the time the sun began to rise, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg for answers or forgiveness. I wasn't going to sit here and let her chip away at whatever self-respect I had left. I was going to leave. No goodbyes, no explanations. She wanted to treat me like I was invisible? Fine. I would become just that. As Megan snored on the couch downstairs, I packed a bag with a few essentials. I grabbed my laptop, some clothes, and my wallet. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew staying wasn't an option. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of the living room, watching her sleep. Her face looked so peaceful, so innocent. It was almost enough to make me doubt what I was doing. Almost. But then I saw the faint bruise on her neck, the one she hadn't even tried to hide, and any trace of doubt vanished. Without a word, I slipped out the door and into the freezing January morning. My breath clouded in front of me as I walked to my car, the weight of everything finally starting to hit me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't coming back. And that's how it started. That's how I ended up here, sitting in this cheap motel room miles away from home, wondering what comes next. But as much as I hated Megan in that moment, as much as I wanted to forget her and everything she had done, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. I didn't know it at the time, but leaving wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The motel room wasn't much. Faded wallpaper, a musty smell, and a bed that creaked with even the slightest movement. It screamed temporary. But that's exactly what I needed. A place to think. A place to breathe. A place far away from Megan and the hollow shell of a marriage I'd been clinging to for far too long. The first few hours after I left were a blur. I drove without direction, the heater in my old sedan blasting as I tried to fight off the chill of the early January morning. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, notifications piling up from Megan. Megan, where are you? Megan, Ryan, this isn't funny. Come back home. Megan, you're being ridiculous. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I even say? That I'd finally had enough? That the sight of her with that mark on her neck was burned into my brain? That I couldn't stand to be another punchline in her twisted sense of humor? Eventually, the messages stopped. That should have felt like a relief, but it didn't. The silence only made my thoughts louder. By the time I found the motel, I was running on fumes, physically and emotionally. I handed over cash for the night and didn't even bother unpacking my bag. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, and let the weight of everything crash over me. For the first time in hours, I let myself cry. The next morning, the cold light of day brought a strange kind of clarity. As much as I wanted to disappear completely, I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Megan was the kind of woman who needed to control the narrative, and if I stayed off the grid too long, I knew she'd twist the situation to make herself the victim. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the dozens of missed calls and texts. Most were from Megan, but a few were from friends, people I hadn't heard from in months, suddenly interested in my whereabouts. One message stood out, though, from her coworker Lisa. Lisa, Ryan, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but you deserve to know. Call me when you can. My heart raced as I stared at the message. Lisa was one of Megan's few friends that I actually liked. She was straightforward, no nonsense, and, most importantly, honest. If she was reaching out to me, it had to be serious. I hesitated for a moment before dialing her number. Ryan, she answered on the first ring. Her voice was tight, almost nervous. Lisa, what's going on? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. She sighed, and I could hear the tension in her breath. I've been debating whether to tell you this all morning, but after what I saw last night, I couldn't keep quiet. Megan, she was with someone else at the party? My stomach dropped. I figured as much, I said bitterly, thinking of the Hickey. Do you know who it was? There was a long pause on the other end. Ryan, it wasn't just one person. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. What do you mean? She was all over this guy. Her new boss, Jeff. Everyone at the party saw it. But later in the night, she disappeared upstairs with him, and then again with someone else. People were talking about it all night, Ryan. I thought she was just drunk and making a fool of herself, but it was worse. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to drive back home and demand answers, but I forced myself to stay calm. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Because you don't deserve this, Lisa said firmly. And because Megan isn't going to tell you the truth. She never will. I thought you should hear it from someone who saw it firsthand. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Megan hadn't just crossed a line. She had obliterated it. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Megan. Megan, I know you're upset, but can we talk? Please. I didn't respond. Instead, I started going through our bank account. If Megan was this brazen with her behavior, I had no doubt she'd try to pull something financially. Sure enough, there were charges from last night, drinks, dinner, even a hotel room. The final charge made my blood run cold. It was a receipt for a jewelry store. She had bought something expensive, very expensive, while I was home alone, waiting for her. I sat back, staring at the screen. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about humiliation, manipulation, and greed. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had flaunted it. I closed my laptop, my mind spinning with the possibilities. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew one thing for certain. Megan had underestimated me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stared at the motel ceiling, the dim light of the afternoon streaming in through the flimsy curtains. Lisa's words replayed in my head like a broken record. She disappeared upstairs with him, and then again with someone else. It wasn't just a Hickey. It wasn't just a drunken mistake. It was deliberate, planned, and disgusting. Megan had always been good at hiding things, or maybe I'd been too blind to see the truth. But now, everything was falling into place, and I was starting to see her for who she really was. A selfish, manipulative woman who didn't care about the destruction she left in her wake. I grabbed my phone again, this time scrolling through our joint accounts and subscriptions. Megan loved her luxury, her rewards for being such a hard worker. But I knew the truth now. Her job wasn't the only thing keeping her busy. It didn't take long to find the cracks. There were unexplained charges on her credit card, memberships to spas I'd never heard of, and subscriptions to dating apps, one she had clearly hidden from me. My stomach turned as I stared at the evidence, each transaction feeling like a slap in the face. I knew I couldn't confront her directly yet. Megan was like a cornered animal. She'd lash out, twist the narrative, and somehow make me look like the bad guy. No, I needed to be smart about this. I needed to gather more proof. The next day, I paid a visit to a private investigator. His office was small, tucked away in a strip mall, but his reputation was solid. His name was Tony, a no-nonsense guy in his 50s with a thick New York accent and a face that looked like it had seen its fair share of dirty secrets. "So, what's the story?" he asked, leaning back in his chair as I handed him the details of Megan's antics. "My wife," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "She's been cheating on me. I have some evidence, but I need more. I need everything." Tony nodded, jotting down notes. "You want pictures, videos, records, the whole 9 yards?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Whatever you can get. I want to know every lie she's told, every secret she's kept. I'm done being in the dark." "Got it," he said, sliding a contract across the desk. "I'll start right away. Give me a few days, and I'll have something for you." As I left his office, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and something close to relief. For the first time in years, I was taking control. Back at the motel, I tried to distract myself, but Megan wasn't making it easy. She had ramped up her messages, alternating between apologies and insults. "Megan, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to grow up." "Megan, fine. If you're going to be a child about this, I'm done trying." "Megan, Ryan, come on. Let's talk. I miss you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every time I thought about her smirking face, the Hickey, and Lisa's words, my blood boiled. Later that night, I got a call from Tony. "Ryan, you're not gonna believe this," he said, his voice low. "Your wife's got more skeletons in her closet than I expected." "What did you find?" I asked, my heart racing. "She's been meeting up with at least 2 guys regularly. One's her boss, Jeff, I think you mentioned him, and the other is some guy named Derek. But here's the kicker. She's been bragging about it to her friends. She thinks she's untouchable." I clenched my fist, my knuckles turning white. "Anything else?" "Plenty," Tony said. "But I think you should see it for yourself. I'll send over the files." When the email came through, I hesitated before opening it. My gut told me it was going to hurt, but I needed to see the truth. The first file was a series of photos. Megan in a restaurant, laughing with Jeff as they leaned in far too close. Megan in a parking lot, kissing Derek like a teenager at prom. Megan entering a hotel with Jeff, her arm wrapped around his. The second file was worse. It was a video, taken from a distance, but clear enough to see Megan sitting with her friends at a bar, talking animatedly. "She's so clueless," Megan said, laughing. "Ryan just believes whatever I tell him. Honestly, it's kind of pathetic. He probably thinks I'm out late because of work." One of her friends chimed in. "Aren't you worried he'll find out?" Megan rolled her eyes. "Please, even if he does, what's he gonna do? Cry about it? He's too weak to leave me. I've got him wrapped around my finger." The room spun as I watched the video. Weak. That's how she saw me. That's what she thought of me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the desk in the motel room, going over everything I had learned. Megan thought she was untouchable, that she could humiliate me and get away with it. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. Not anymore. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew one thing for sure. Megan's reign of manipulation was coming to an end, and she wasn't going to see it coming. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The haze of shock and sadness had lifted, replaced by something sharper. Determination. Megan had underestimated me for years, but now I had the tools to take control. No more begging for answers. No more letting her humiliate me. The files Tony sent me were more than just proof of her infidelity. They were ammunition. Every smirk, every kiss, every insult she threw at me was documented and ready to be used. But I wasn't about to confront her with it just yet. Megan was cunning, and I needed to be one step ahead. First, I went back through our finances. The jewelry purchase still nagged at me. What was she buying, and for whom? I pulled up the transaction details, and with a little digging, I found the store's phone number. When I called, I kept my voice calm and casual. Hi, this is Ryan. My wife Megan made a purchase from your store recently, but I think she may have used the wrong card. Can you tell me what the item was? The clerk hesitated for a moment before responding. Of course, sir. It was a men's watch, platinum, custom engraved. My stomach sank. Engraved with what? To Jeff, my rock. Love always, Megan. I clenched my fist, my anger barely contained. She had bought an expensive watch for her boss, with my money. Thank you, I said, my voice tight. I hung up and took a deep breath, my mind racing. Megan wasn't just cheating on me. She was funneling our hard-earned money into her little affairs, showering her lovers with gifts while I sat at home, oblivious. I wasn't going to confront her about it yet, though. Not until I had everything in place. The next step in my plan was securing my own future. I didn't trust Megan to leave things peacefully, especially not after what Tony had uncovered. So, I reached out to a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Diane who came highly recommended by a friend. When I explained the situation to her, she didn't mince words. Ryan, your wife sounds like the kind of person who thrives on control. If you want to walk away from this marriage with your dignity and finances intact, you'll need to act fast. What do I need to do? I asked. First, we freeze the joint accounts. If she's already misusing your money, we can stop her before she drains everything. Second, gather every piece of evidence you have, proof of infidelity, financial misuse, anything that shows she's breached the trust in your marriage. The more we have, the stronger your case will be. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. And what about the house? I don't want her keeping it. Diane smiled faintly. Don't worry. With everything you've told me, we'll make sure she doesn't walk away with more than she deserves. Her confidence was contagious, and for the first time in days, I felt like I had a shot at reclaiming my life. That evening, I returned to the motel and went through the files again. Each piece of evidence was like a puzzle piece, and the picture they painted was damning. Megan's affairs weren't just a betrayal of our marriage. They were a blatant mockery of everything I thought we had built together. I started drafting my next steps. The first move would be freezing the accounts, just as Diane suggested. The second would be ensuring Megan's secrets came to light, not just for her sake, but for mine. She had humiliated me, dismissed me, and treated me like I was nothing. But when the truth came out, she wouldn't be laughing anymore. 2 days later, I got a call from Tony. Ryan, I've got something new for you, he said, his tone serious. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. It's about Jeff, he said. Turns out, he's not just your wife's boss. He's married too. And his wife has no idea what he's been up to. I froze, the implications sinking in. If Jeff's wife knew about his affair with Megan, it could change everything. Do you have a way to contact her? I asked. Tony chuckled. Already ahead of you. Her name's Caroline, and I've got her number right here. I hesitated for a moment. Reaching out to her felt like crossing a line, but at the same time, She deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. And if exposing Jeff helped dismantle Megan's little fantasy world, it was a win-win. I thanked Tony and hung up, staring at the number on my screen. My hand hovered over the call button, my mind racing. Finally, I took a deep breath and hit dial. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered. Hello? Hi, is this Caroline? I asked, my voice steady. Yes, who's this? My name is Ryan, I said. I think we need to talk. It's about your husband and my wife. There was a long pause on the other end before she replied, her voice tight. What about them? I told her everything. By the time the call ended, Caroline was furious. Not at me, but at Jeff. She thanked me for telling her and promised to get in touch if she found out anything else. Hanging up, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Megan had spent years tearing me down, but now, her perfect little world was beginning to crack. And this was only the beginning. The call with Caroline was a game changer. She had been blindsided, just like me, but instead of wallowing in shock, she promised to act swiftly. Jeff doesn't know what's coming, she said before hanging up. I almost felt sorry for the guy. Almost. Now, I just had to wait. It didn't take long. The very next evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Megan. Megan, Ryan, we need to talk. Call me. Now. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Had Caroline already confronted Jeff? Or was this about the joint account? I had followed Diane's advice earlier that day and frozen everything, effectively cutting off Megan's access to the money she'd been so carelessly spending. I ignored her text, but not for long. The phone rang, Megan's name lighting up the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered, keeping my voice as calm as possible. What do you want, Megan? Ryan, what the hell is going on? She snapped, her tone sharp and accusatory. Why is our account frozen? I tried to pay for groceries today, and my card got declined. Interesting, I said, feigning indifference. Maybe it's because you've been using our money to buy gifts for your boyfriend. Or should I say, boyfriends? There was a beat of silence, and then she laughed, cold, dismissive. Oh, don't start with this again, Ryan. You're being ridiculous. Jeff is just a friend, and I don't know what Lisa told you, but she's always had a thing for stirring up drama. Save it, Megan. I cut her off. I've got pictures, videos, and receipts. I know everything. The jewelry, the hotel rooms, the dating apps. You really thought I wouldn't figure it out? Her voice faltered, but she recovered quickly. And what? You think freezing the account is some kind of power move? Grow up, Ryan. You're acting like a child. Maybe, I said, my voice steady. But at least I'm not the one sneaking around, humiliating my spouse, and spending money that doesn't belong to me. I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. The rush of adrenaline was almost overwhelming. For the first time in years, I had stood up to Megan, and it felt good. The fallout didn't stop there. A few hours later, I got another call, this time from Tony. Ryan, you're not gonna believe this, he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Looks like Jeff's wife, Caroline, went nuclear. She's kicked him out of the house, and from what I hear, she's planning to file for divorce. Good for her, I said, unable to hide the satisfaction in my voice. That's not all, Tony continued. Word's getting around at their company, too. Jeff's position might be in jeopardy. I couldn't help but laugh. Megan had hitched her wagon to Jeff, thinking he was her ticket to a glamorous life, and now it was all falling apart. As the night wore on, I realized something. Megan was about to experience what it felt like to lose control. And for someone like her, that was the worst punishment of all. The next morning, I woke up to a string of desperate messages from Megan. She had gone from angry and dismissive to frantic and pleading, a shift that made me realize she was finally starting to feel the weight of her actions. Megan, Ryan, please, can we just talk? I messed up. Okay? Let's fix this. Megan, I don't know what you're trying to do, but freezing the account is cruel. I need access to the money. Megan, you're overreacting. Let's sit down and figure this out. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent all her messages to Diane. She had told me to document everything, and I wasn't about to let Megan wriggle out of this with her fake apologies and crocodile tears. By the afternoon, Megan showed up at the motel. I don't know how she found me, but seeing her standing there in the parking lot, clutching her coat against the cold, was both surprising and infuriating. "Ryan," she called, her voice trembling. "Please, can we just talk?" I didn't want to cause a scene, so I stepped outside, keeping a safe distance. "What do you want, Megan?" I asked, my tone flat. She looked disheveled, her usual confidence replaced with something close to panic. "You're being so unfair," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I've made mistakes, but we can get through this. We've been together for so long. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I crossed my arms, my expression cold. "It used to mean something, Megan, before you decided to throw it all away for some cheap thrills." Her face crumpled, but I wasn't falling for it. "It wasn't like that," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was drunk. I wasn't thinking." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Don't insult me by pretending this was a one-time mistake. I know about Jeff. I know about Derek. I know about the money you've been spending. And I know about the watch you bought for Jeff, your rock, right? You've been lying for months, Megan." She froze, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for an excuse. "Ryan, please. I was lost. I was stupid. But I love you. I really do." I almost laughed. "You love me? Is that what you tell Jeff and Derek too? Do you love them when you're sneaking around behind my back?" She stepped closer, but I held up a hand, stopping her. "It's over, Megan. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The accounts are frozen, and I'm filing for divorce. You can't manipulate your way out of this one." Her tears turned to anger in an instant. "You're being ridiculous. You're going to ruin everything over one mistake?" "This isn't one mistake," I said, my voice rising. "This is who you are, Megan. And I refuse to be your doormat anymore." She stood there for a moment, stunned into silence. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed off, her heels clicking against the icy pavement. That night, I got another call from Tony. "Ryan, you're gonna love this," he said, his voice brimming with amusement. "Jeff's been fired. Word about the affair got out at the office, and they decided he was more trouble than he was worth." I couldn't help but grin. Megan had hitched her future to Jeff, and now he was just as broken as the life she had tried to build with him. "Thanks for the update, Tony," I said, hanging up with a sense of satisfaction. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being played. The tables had turned, and Megan was finally facing the consequences of her actions. But something told me she wasn't done yet. Megan wasn't the type to go down without a fight, and I was ready for whatever came next. I had barely finished my morning coffee when the phone buzzed again. Another call from Megan. I considered ignoring it like I had the others, but something told me this one might be different. I took a deep breath and answered. "What now, Megan?" I asked, my voice tired but firm. "You froze the accounts, Ryan," she spat, her tone oscillating between panic and fury. "How am I supposed to live? You think you're so smart, but you've left me with nothing." "That's ironic," I replied coldly, "considering you didn't seem to care about leaving me with nothing when you were spending our money on jewelry and hotel rooms for your boyfriend." She exhaled sharply, and I could hear her pacing on the other end. "You're being so cruel. I made mistakes, okay? But this is low, even for you." "Low? Megan, do you even hear yourself?" I shot back. "You've been cheating, lying, and using me for months. And now that I've cut you off, I'm the bad guy?" There was a long pause before she spoke again, this time in a quieter, more calculated tone. "You're not perfect either, Ryan. Don't think I won't air your dirty laundry if you keep this up. I have my own proof, you know." Her words hit like a gut punch, but I didn't let it show. "Good luck with that," I said evenly. "Unlike you, I've got nothing to hide." I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding. This wasn't Megan just being angry. This was her trying to regain control. A few hours later, I got a call from Diane, my lawyer. "Ryan, "We've got a situation," she said, her tone serious. "What's going on?" I asked, bracing myself. "Megan filed a counterclaim this morning. She's accusing you of financial abuse and trying to paint you as the controlling, neglectful husband." I froze. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Diane said. "But don't worry, we'll handle it. She doesn't have a leg to stand on with the evidence we've gathered. It's a classic desperation move." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Megan was trying to turn the tables, but it wouldn't work. Still, the fact that she was willing to go that far showed just how desperate she had become. That evening, I got a knock on my motel door. My stomach sank as I opened it to find Megan standing there, her face a mask of calm fury. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me before I could stop her. "This isn't your house, Megan," I said, closing the door behind her. "You can't just barge in like this." She ignored me, crossing her arms and glaring. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Running away, freezing the accounts, turning my life upside down. Well, I've got news for you, Ryan. You're not going to win." I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "This isn't a game, Megan. You destroyed our marriage, and now you're dealing with the fallout. That's not my fault, it's yours." "You think you're so righteous," she snapped, her voice rising. "But you're just as pathetic as ever. Running to lawyers, hiring a private investigator. It's pathetic, Ryan." I smirked, which only seemed to enrage her more. "What's really pathetic is blaming me for your own mistakes. You cheated, Megan. You lied. And now you're trying to play the victim? Give me a break." Her calm mask cracked, and she lunged toward me, her finger jabbing into my chest. "You think this is over? It's not. I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me, Ryan. You're going to lose everything." I stepped back, refusing to be intimidated. "You've already taken everything, Megan. There's nothing left for me to lose." She stared at me for a moment, her breathing heavy, before storming out of the room. After she left, I sat on the bed, my mind spinning. Megan's desperation was escalating, and I knew this was far from over. She was like a cornered animal, lashing out in every direction. But if she thought I was going to back down, she was wrong. I wasn't the same man she had walked all over for years. And if she wanted a fight, I was ready. The next morning, Diane called me again. I could tell by her tone that something big had happened. "Ryan, you're going to want to hear this," she said, her voice brimming with confidence. "Go ahead," I said, sitting up straight in the motel chair. "We've uncovered some new information about Megan's spending," Diane explained. "Not only was she funneling your joint funds into gifts and hotel stays, but she also withdrew a significant amount of cash just before you froze the accounts. The kicker? It looks like she used that money to secure a new apartment for Jeff." I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, she had. Megan's entire life had become a web of lies, and now that web was unraveling. "That's not all," Diane continued. "We've also got evidence from the investigator that she was planning to transfer more money into a personal account under Jeff's name. She was trying to clean you out, Ryan. But because we acted quickly, she didn't get the chance." Hearing this only solidified my resolve. Megan wasn't just reckless. She was calculated. She had planned to strip me of everything, all while laughing behind my back. Later that day, Tony sent me another file. It was a collection of texts between Megan and her friends. The messages were brutal, each one worse than the last. "Megan, Ryan's such a loser. I don't even know why I married him in the first place." Megan's friend, "Then why stay with him?" Megan, "Because he's useful. Or at least he was. Jeff's so much better. He actually knows how to make me feel special." Megan, "I'm just waiting for the right moment to leave Ryan. Once Jeff's divorce is final, we'll be set." I felt my stomach churn as I read the messages. This wasn't just infidelity. This was cold, calculated betrayal. By the evening, I was ready to make my next move. I had stayed quiet for long enough, letting Megan dig her own grave, and now it was time to let her feel the consequences. I called Caroline, Jeff's now estranged wife, and shared the texts and financial evidence Diane had uncovered. "Caroline, I think this will help you in your divorce proceedings," I said, forwarding the files. Her response was immediate. "Thank you, Ryan. You have no idea how much this means to me. Jeff thinks he can get away with everything, but he's about to learn otherwise." Next, I sent the same evidence to Diane, who assured me it would be more than enough to solidify my case. "This will make Megan look terrible in court," she said. "And with the financial misuse on record, she's not walking away with much, if anything." That night, the real storm hit. Megan called me again, her voice frantic and full of rage. "What the hell did you do, Ryan?" she screamed. "Jeff's wife is suing him for everything, and now he's blaming me. He says I've ruined his life." "Funny," I said, my tone icy. "That's exactly what you tried to do to me." "You're such a vindictive bastard," she spat. "This isn't over, Ryan. I'll make you pay for this." "You've already done enough damage, Megan," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's over. The lawyer has everything. The court will handle the rest." Her breathing was ragged, and I could tell she was scrambling for something, anything, to regain control. "You're pathetic, Ryan," she said finally, her voice dripping with venom. "You've always been pathetic. No wonder I had to find someone else to make me happy." But her words didn't sting the way they used to. I had heard them all before, and now they just sounded hollow. "Goodbye, Megan," I said, hanging up for the last time. A month later, the divorce proceedings began. Megan walked into the courtroom with her usual bravado, but it quickly faded as Diane presented the evidence. The texts, the financial misuse, the affairs. It all painted a damning picture of her character. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. Megan walked away with barely anything, while I kept the house and the majority of our assets. Jeff, now jobless and divorced, was left to fend for himself. As for Megan, she tried reaching out to me once more, claiming she wanted to start over and make things right, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. In the weeks that followed, I slowly began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in years, I felt free. Megan's betrayal had shattered me, but it had also forced me to see the truth, and in the end, that truth set me free. Some people might call it a sad ending, but for me, it was a new beginning, and that's all I could ask for.